From the jump ball mix-up rule to a bizarre rule that prohibits players from practicing slam dunks before games, these are the weirdest rules in NBA history. Every basketball fan knows that the jump ball at the beginning of games is a really big deal, right? But what if both teams mix up and jump on the wrong side? Well, turns out it's not the end of the world. The referee still has 24 seconds to fix the problem. But if they take longer, well, tough luck. The points scored till then count. But oddly enough, from now on, teams will have to switch sides in the next half. Now, if this mistake happens during the game and not at the start, the teams will have to keep scoring on the wrong side for the rest of the quarter. Crazy, right? I mean, you'd think that professional players wouldn't mess up such a simple thing. But who knows? Maybe they get too excited or too nervous. But don't worry, in the recorded NBA history, there haven't been any instances of such a mix-up. The rule's basically in place for the sake of it. But that's not the only weird rule in the NBA. Did you know that there's a rule about kicking the ball? It's called the punch rule, and it happens when either intentionally or unintentionally, a player redirects the ball's movement using anything other than regular hand usage. This includes striking, shoulder bumping, or using any part of their bodies to alter the trajectory of the ball, and for some reason, punching too. Oh, and get this, if a player violates this rule, the ball's turned over. Now, you might be wondering why this rule was introduced in the first place. Well, it's all about fan safety. Can you imagine if someone like Steven Adams or LeBron James, who are absolute beasts, dive into the stands to save the ball, but instead of gently tapping it away, they punch it with all their might and accidentally hit a poor fan enjoying their Pepsi? Ouch. That'd be that fan's last live NBA match, I'll guarantee it. I bet players like Meta World Peace would have punched a dozen balls, all while jumping into the stands every game if this rule didn't exist. But seriously, safety should always come first. And as weird as it is, the punch rule helps ensure that both players and fans stay safe during the game. There's a good reason behind this next weird rule as well, and it's called the emergency draft rule. It sounds pretty serious, right? Trust me, it's gonna get weird too. The rule states that if at least 5 players from a single NBA team were to die in an accident, the team would be allowed to pick players from every other team in the league to complete their roster. If this unimaginable situation were to happen, each team would be allowed to protect 5 players from being drafted, and the affected team could draft the remaining players who aren't protected by another team, 1 player per team. The affected team wouldn't be able to take 2 unprotected players from the same team though. I mean, we can all agree that this rule is pretty grim, but it's important to have a contingency plan in place for any emergency. It's kind of like an insurance policy that you never want to use, but it's good to have just in case. Let's just hope that this rule remains unused, and we never have to deal with such a tragic situation. Speaking of weird rules that are barely used, here's another. The foul out rule is one that rarely ever applies. This specific rule is still super interesting though, so let me break it down for you real quick. Let's assume that a player receives his 6th foul, and at the same time, there's not a single eligible player remaining on the bench. The said player can either stay on the court or be replaced by one of the non-ejected players on the bench who may have also fouled out. But wait, there's a catch. Every foul committed by this player or the player replacing him will count as a personal, team, or technical foul. So if the opposing team gets fouled on a 2-pointer, they're gonna get 3 free throws instead of 2. And if it's a 3-pointer, they'll get 4 free throws instead of 3. Yikes. I mean, it's a bit like a domino effect, isn't it? One player fouls out, and then suddenly everyone's racking up fouls left and right. It's a slippery slope with no hope to resist the slip. Luckily, this rule hasn't been used in the NBA yet, but college basketball has a different set of rules. In college, if a team has no players left on the bench, the game becomes a 4 versus 5, meaning one team only has 4 players left on the court. Now that's what I call a handicap. But hey, let's hope we never have to witness this rule in action, and all the players can stay on the court until the end of the game. Don't think I'm done with all these weird NBA rules just yet, because there's more where that came from. Let's talk about the 6th man on the court rule. To understand this one, imagine a basketball game where one team has 6 players on the court. It's not technically illegal until the referees realize it, but any field goal scored by the extra player will be counted until then. However, once caught, the team will be given a technical foul for unsportsmanlike conduct. But let's be real, no team in NBA history has ever been dumb enough to try this. Why? Because it's not worth the risk of getting caught and tarnishing the team's reputation. Plus, basketball fans expect to watch a game with 2 teams teams playing 5 versus 5. Can you imagine the confusion if there were 6 players on the court? Rajon Rondo would be looking around like, wait a minute, where'd that guy come from? While trying to make his signature Rondo fake. Maybe some of the less observant players wouldn't even notice the extra person. But let's look at another weird rule that the NBA's super strict about. You can't gamble on other teams with the NBA's money. Suppose you're an NBA official or a player. You get your hard-earned money at the end of the week, and you decide to gamble on some team with the money you just got. Maybe you want some more green out of the game, or maybe you're just looking for some added fun. Well, guess what? That's a big no-no in the NBA. The NBA has a strict anti-gambling policy that prohibits all players, coaches, and officials from betting on any basketball game, regardless of whether it involves their own team or not. No joke. This is done to ensure that the sport isn't tainted by any form of corruption or scandal. If a player or coach is found to be gambling on the outcome of games, they face severe penalties, up to and including fines, suspension, and even a lifetime ban from the league. Plus, gambling on games can lead to criminal activity, such as match fixing or points shaving, where players intentionally manipulate the outcome of games to benefit themselves or others who have placed bets on the game. This can have a devastating effect on the integrity of the game because it undermines the fundamental principles of fair play and sportsmanship. It's important to note that not all forms of gambling are prohibited by the NBA. For example, players are allowed to participate in legal casino games, so long as they aren't related to basketball or the NBA. Finally, there's one more weirdly specific rule that I've got to talk about. Did you know that warm-up dunking isn't allowed? You may think the rule's present so that one team can't get pre-ready for a match. Well, that's not the real thing, guys. The rule's actually in place to prevent damage to the rim and backboard. Dunking is an intense activity that puts a lot of stress on the equipment, and repeated dunks can weaken the structure of the rim and backboard over time. This can lead to the rim becoming bent or the backboard shattering, which could be dangerous for players and fans.
Trae Young, defense broke down, nobody there to help, and Trae delivers.
Just ask Shaq. He knows all about it. To avoid this, the NBA has instituted a rule that players may only perform layups, jump shots, and other non-dunking activities during pre-game warm-ups and shoot-arounds. While the strange rule may seem overly strict, it's in place to ensure the safety of everyone involved in the game, including the players, coaches, and the fans. So, there you have it.
Iguodala back out to Green. Thompson, one fake, one dribble, one shot. Got it! Golden State retakes the lead. Timeout, Toronto. What a turnaround for the...
From a bizarre rule that prohibits players from practicing slam dunks before a game to the jump ball mix-up rule, those were the weirdest rules in NBA history.